Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Rocking Midlife Podcast. And as I say every single time, I am incredibly excited. Unfortunately, I should have pressed go on the record button like 30 minutes ago because I've been having the most amazing conversation already. But you are going to love this week's guest, and we are welcoming Dr. Efrat LaMandre all the way from New York. So welcome.
Thank you. So honored to be here.
It is absolutely amazing having you here. And I know that what you have to share is really going to speak to so many women who, like myself, have basically been suffering in silence. Because today we're going to be talking about the issue of living in pain, dealing with illness, or being incapacitated in any way, and thinking it's just in your head, and how you can live abundantly and get beyond that place and actually make your life so much better. So Dr. Efrat, who we're going to call Dr. E, is the founder of the New Method, where she empowers patients to finally realize that their symptoms are not in their head. I mean, this is basically the episode where you're going to be able to go, see, I told you so, to those people who doubted you. So before we dive on in, tell us a little bit about your story and how did you end up focusing on this area of medicine?
Thanks for that. So to all your listeners, I'm going to try to make the story interesting because, you don't want to hear autobiographies. So my first practice is called EG Healthcare, and it is a primary care GP, I think you guys call it. And I did, at this point we serve over 20,000 patients, but at the time I did what every good GP does, which is if you come in and you say you don't feel well, I ran the labs. And when the labs were fine, I told you, you were fine, so you're good. And this is why I tell my patients, there's no evil, there's no malintent. This is what I learned. If the labs are good, patient's good. And if the patient keeps insisting that they're not good, then either they're a little bit touched or I don't know, shoulder shrug. And I went on, I never really gave it a second thought. I never gave it a second thought because why would I, right? Everything's normal. And then so I'm in functional medicine now, and what I've discovered in functional medicine is that the people who go back to school for functional medicine have either are sick themselves or have someone that they love or are sick, because no one goes back to school. Why would you go back to school? You already finished
that's
school.
right.
So by the way, if my cat's tail is on this podcast, it's just ad flavor.
It's all good. Okay. For people who are listening in, we've already had the conversation. Dr. E and I bonded over our love of cats and numerous cats in our lives, which I won't embarrass either of us by saying how many.
It's bad luck to count, so we're not going to count.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, so my wife became sick. She had 2 autoimmune issues, and we're both in medicine, and the only thing they could offer really was heavy duty medication. And we knew that that's not what we wanted. We were relatively healthy people, we did all the things that we thought we were supposed to do. And so we started exploring, and this is before the internet is what the internet is now. So it was a deep dive. And we came upon this provider who had the audacity to suggest that our issues have to do with nutrition, which is ridiculous. I hope my sarcasm is coming through on this podcast. And, because we thought we were healthy eaters, and the audacity to suggest that like we were doing it wrong. So, and also they ran these crazy tests we had never heard of, but we had nothing to lose. We were like, let's explore it. Who cares? It's not an experimental drug. I mean, the man just told us to change our nutrition. So we did it, and our life completely changed.
Wow.
Our life changed. My wife got her life back. And then I just started taking class after class after class. Eventually got my PhD in integrative medicine. But what I came across, I initially started treating people with autoimmune issues, but I came across the new understanding that just because your labs are normal doesn't mean everything's fine. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and see, kind of where that's landing and take it from there.
I think every woman I personally know, I think would relate to that at some point in their life. I've heard that from other doctors that are functional medicine doctors as well. The same thing, because our regular doctors are just taught to look at the range, like, okay, you fit within that range, so therefore you're good. They're not interested in the fact that you might be at the top of that range or the bottom of that range of that marker for health, for intervention. They just go, yep, you're in the range, so you're all good, off you go. And unfortunately, like America, our healthcare system here is struggling as well. We've got a lack of doctors, everything's under strain. And if ever there was a time where we actually need to be advocates for our own health, I think it's really now, because the average doctor is not keeping up with all the knowledge, like what you're saying. They don't know about nutrition, and they actually really don't have that much time. Often it's 10 minutes, like next, next, next. So I think anything that you can give us, any tips on how we can advocate for ourselves, like what are some things that we should be looking at? What are some symptoms we should be seeing red flags over? And maybe what are some tips that we can do? So I've thrown a whole lot at you there. Where do you want to take that from? Where do you think?
I'll take all of it. So I'll take all of it for 500. Okay, as I feel like I'm on Jeopardy. Okay, let's first start with you. You talk about the providers. So I just want to say this. It's not that they're not interested. Really, truly, really and truly, when you finish school, you really and truly feel like you're doing the best for your patients. There's no malice. No doctor goes to school.
I would agree with that.
Or nurse practitioner or PA, and to do any harm or malice. So really, it's not a lack of interest. It's true belief that they're doing the right thing. It's just learning one tool. And then, so that's one part. The second part of it is time constraint for sure. The system, I still practice conventional medicine every Monday, and the timing is insane. I mean, the timing is insane.
Yeah.
So you have that aspect of it, but then you also, before I give you the tips, we also have to talk about the type of patient. There are plenty of patients who are very happy in conventional medicine. They don't mind 7 medications. They don't mind, they don't necessarily want to make the changes that come. So if I say to my patient with diabetes, hey, if you didn't eat this way, we'd have to be on 3 meds. And like, well, it's really kind of hard. It's not the space I'm in right now. That's okay too. And I'm happy to be able to give them what they need. So it's also patient dependent, right? It's not just provider dependent. So with that in mind, I like to tell my patients, use the system of conventional medicine for when you need it, and briefly in our conversation prior to pressing record, clearly conventional medicine helped you several times. Surgeries, medications, right? And so it's not one or the other. If you are sick, if you have a pathology, you better believe you're going to want some conventional medicine.
Absolutely,
right?
Yes.
But when you don't fit the mold is when you need a little bit of an extra touch. And I think, we explore that as well. So let's give concrete examples of that, right? So certainly if you have pneumonia, you're gonna want an X-ray, you're gonna want antibiotics. But the women that we're talking about are either, they've gone and their labs are normal, or maybe they have 1 or 2 issues. Maybe, they have hypertension, or maybe they are a little bit overweight. But now they're having other symptoms. We can't keep blaming everything. Well, if you just lost 5 pounds, you'd be fine. Well, what do you expect? You're 55. What do you, right? So we can't blame everything on that. So it's either your labs are normal and you're not heard, or you have some abnormalities. So now you're not heard because we're just putting everything on the abnormality. Either way, you're completely ignored.
I think that's a real issue for women in this midlife area too, because it's so easy to write everything off as, oh, that's just menopause.
Everything is menopause, or everything is your stress. Sometimes my patients will say, well, it must be hormonal. I'm like, well, is it hormonal? I don't know if it's hormonal, because that's too easy. It might be, but let's put that at the bottom of the list. So then you ask me like what we should do. So of course, the first thing, if you're not feeling well, the first thing you do, you always go to your GP first, do all the tests, do all the images, do all that first. Never skip that step. Never say, hey, I read this book and I really think I have this, right? Never skip the step, because God forbid there's a big situation. So then if it comes back normal or you're not satisfied, don't get mad, because the person who's in that office just does not have the tool set. So now is when you go to functional medicine or integrated, right? You don't ask your electrician to do plumbing.
Yes.
So you can't ask your PCP to do functional. So now you're going to go find a functional medicine person. And honestly, any functional medicine provider, myself included, I won't take you on unless you already did all the labs.
Right.
Unless you already did all the labs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure that you're telling me you're tired and I'm going to look at adrenal fatigue. Meanwhile, you're walking out with anemia or hypothyroid. We can't miss those biggies, right? So you want to make sure you do all these things. So now you take a look at the patient and say, okay, your labs are good. We know you don't have a pathology, but your symptoms are real. And your symptoms indicate one of 2 things. Either you're pre-disease, meaning you're on your way to autoimmunity. For example, your joints hurt, but you're not coming up positive for rheumatoid arthritis. You're on your way to rheumatoid arthritis. Your markers are just not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So either you're pre-disease, and we need to get in on that right now, or you're what I call differently diseased, the type of diseases that we do not check for in conventional medicine, such as mold toxicity.
I don't think I've ever heard about that other than seeing something on the internet.
Super real. So we'll talk about that.
Wow.
So you go, you do the test, you
Mm-hmm.
come back normal, and then you go further.
Yep.
And then you say, so like what I do with my patients, and I'm sure any functional medicine provider will do the same. We take a list of all your symptoms, everything, even though you might be coming to me from your stomach or your bladder, but I'm asking you everything, your knees, your ears, everything, because you might not even imagine which things are connected.
Yeah.
Everything's connected, because we forget that it's all connected.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole body, isn't it? It's not just the arm totally separate to. Yes. I like that.
We forget, right? Because one doctor is in charge of your vagina, and one other person is in charge of your stomach, and one other person is in charge of your eyes. And it's like, are these things even connected, right?
Exactly. And I mean, that's fine for them to specialize, particularly when there's surgery involved. Like, it's great that they're specialists in that particular area, but
100%.
we're missing that overall connection. And I love the fact that you pointed out too, that you expect people to see a regular conventional doctor before moving to you. So it's not like one of these wellness gurus out there saying extreme stuff. You're actually a qualified doctor who's basically using regular medicine as your launch pad, aren't you, to then take it so much further.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm an NP with a PhD, so nurse practitioner with a PhD. I have that where you are. So we practice as doctors.
Right.
And then, but my doctor title is not MD, it's PhD, just to clarify, so there's no confusion. But yes, I use conventional medicine as my jumping board. Mm-hmm. I always start there. And so I expect my clients I'm not instead of your GP, I'm an adjunct too.
Yes.
Right. Especially because I have clients all over the world. I can't be their GP, like licensing wise. So I can say, hey, this is my recommendations. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's do that. So let's talk about the pre-disease and the differently disease. So we take all your symptoms, and let's just say it's joint pain. And first things first, we're going to start with nutritional overhaul. So we start with nutrition, and then we do a check-in and say, well, how did these symptoms go? Did my joint pain get better? Did my brain fog go away? Did my skin clear up? Right? If the answer is yes, we're pretty much halfway there, or all the way there, it depends. So we quantify all your symptoms. It's like, oh, look, you used to be like 100. 0 means no symptoms. The further away you are from 0, the worse you are. Start at 100. Look at that. We're down to 50 just in a month or two. And so far, all we did was nutrition. Great. We now know that for you, nutrition is a trigger for your symptoms. And if we didn't change your nutrition, it stands to reason that over time, if you're pre-disease, you're going to have that disease. You're going to have the rheumatoid arthritis. Now, if I have the patient with rheumatoid arthritis, I still am going to, I have plenty of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, I'm still going to do nutritional intervention, because you'd be surprised. I have patients who say to me, wow, I was on meds from my joint pain, and as soon as I got off of sugar or gluten or dairy, whatever their thing is, I can move my hands, I can move my knees again. Yeah, it's amazing, because for them, that's the trigger, right? So it's about the trigger and reversing it. Let me pause for a second, because I could talk forever. I want to give you a moment to interject, because you're not from New York, so you're not going to interrupt me. So go ahead.
It's all good. It's all good. Look, I mean, there's so many, we probably need to get you on again. There's so many different tangents we can go down the road on. I'm just thinking, I do have a friend who's an American lady who's a functional medicine practitioner as well. She's in New Zealand, and her specialty, her husband is a chef, and their specialty is using nutrition to help cognitive function, so that people don't.
100%.
Yeah, I think her byline is Alzheimer's can be a choice, which quite a confrontational line, but
she's 100% correct.
And that's what we just don't hear. We don't hear that your nutritional choices can be that profound in how you age and how you cope with the next season in your life as you get into your 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond.
Your nutritional choices are everything. We are so programmed to thinking it's just diabetes and cholesterol. And as long as I go annual and I'm not diabetic and I don't have cholesterol, I'm good. And that's not the case at all. It's not the case at all. I mean, the Alzheimer's thing, brain fog, dementia. So yes, there's a predisposition. Yes, you might have the gene.
Yeah.
But how you live your life can turn on the gene or turn off the gene. Nutrition is a big component of that. Brain fog, right? If you have brain fog and you're forgetting your keys, that's the beginning. Don't accept that as old age. Don't like, oh yeah, so busy.
Are you busy? My brain scrambled. It's menopause.
You were busier when the kids were little and you didn't forget things. It's not because you're busy. You were busier. We were all busier when the kids were little and we were working and we're taking care of our kids and we're taking care of this and that. We were way busier than I mean, I'm pretty busy now, but nothing was as busy as like running around with all these. And you didn't forget the way you do now. So don't blame it on busyness either. And don't blame it on age. Blame it on the fact that you're neuroinflamed. You're neuroinflamed because of the things you're exposed to. And here's a simple, like, you know, way to think of it. You know that if you have a drink, too many drinks, you know the next day you're not clear. Right? You're not going to go do a presentation and drink the night before.
Yep, that's true.
You're not going to let your kid do a college entrance exam and drink the night before. Why do you think the list ends there at alcohol?
That is so true, because we just think of the real obvious baddies, don't we? Well, cut the bread, cut the chocolate, cut the alcohol, we're good to go.
So I had a patient, this is, you know, so especially the gluten is a known neuroinflammatory. I have a patient who all her life had some form of motion sickness. So she just thought it was just she was a kid. She didn't think anything of it. But she's in her late 50s and she realized that the motion sickness is getting worse. So now this is not motion sickness as childhood. Now there's a difference, right? It used to be, you know, she couldn't read in the car, but now she can't. She used to travel by train all the time. Now she suddenly can't travel by train. She realized that when she swims, she can't do like a flip turn. So something's worsening, right? And she has Alzheimer's in her family. So she came and she was more concerned about the Alzheimer's piece. Didn't really think much about the worsening, but this is part of the conversation. So we took her off of gluten. She's traveling on trains. She's doing flip turns. Her memory is sharper. Because for her, I'm not saying every human in the world.
I understand that.
For her, gluten was such a neuroinflammatory. She's better than she was as a kid.
Wow.
So she probably had this all her life and it's just really catching up with her, and her life is back. Like her life is back and then some. Like she's able to work in the car, things she couldn't do before. So nutrition is so much more than diabetes and cholesterol. It's everything. It's everything.
What about I'm just trying to think, some of the symptoms, you know, that are common for people at midlife, because obviously, you know, our podcast is Rocking Midlife. So, you know, we've got women who are facing like perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause. And it'd be interesting to know how many of their symptoms actually could be helped. So what about night sweats? Let's just rattle off a few. Is that something that can be affected?
Yeah, 100%. That's such a good question, because before I will prescribe hormones for those of my patients in New York or recommend hormones for those outside, I will always say, let's see how much of this is nutritional, because if you're not, we're just going to, how much hormones we're going to give you, right?
Yeah.
Classic example. Again, we all tend to drink a glass of wine in our middle age in the evening. A glass of wine too. It's very relaxing. It's very sophisticated. We can afford wine now, right? So everything is wonderful. Right. Well, wine is going to give you insomnia, give you hot flashes at night, give you night sweats. Let's see what happens when you don't drink alcohol for 30 days. Tell me how bad your night sweats are. I have a feeling their night sweats are either going to be 0 or at least cut by 50%. Now, okay, so that's alcohol.
Yeah.
Tell me how your sleep is if you have a very heavy carb dinner, because we have a glass of wine, we have some pasta,
have your bread. Yep.
Heavy bread. So we go to sleep with a ton of carbs that messes with our sugar at night. Now, this worked in our 20s. It doesn't matter. We process things. So with these night sweats that we're having are really just like highs and lows of sugar. We're assuming it's hormonal. And then we go, maybe we get hormones and maybe it gets better, maybe it doesn't, but that's not necessarily a problem. So first things first, I won't do hormones on any client that's not doing the work first. I do have colleagues that do it. God bless them. That's awesome. I want to see how far we get. Now, there are certain things that are 100% hormonal, such as vaginal dryness.
Yes.
Menopausal vaginal dryness, you're going to need, E3 vaginal cream, no question, no nutrition in the world's going to fix that. So there are some things 100%. or the patient who's already done all the cleanup, or like in month 3, month 4, still having some hot flashes. Awesome. This is the time. But a huge chunk of what you willing to put money on the fact that is hormones is probably nutritional.
That's amazing. Ladies who are listening in, husbands who are listening in, share this with the women in your lives. It's actually, it's daunting in one side. You think, oh my gosh, I'll have to overhaul my lifestyle. But I can imagine with someone like yourself, you're not going to get thrown in, are you, on your own to sink or swim? But I think it's also, there's different emotions I think that people will feel when they're hearing this. It's like, you're kidding. Like, I was sharing my story with Dr. E earlier of how I've lived with chronic pain and how it's badly affected my life over the last 10 to 12 years in particular. It's actually makes you a bit angry and ripped off too, doesn't it? That why didn't anyone tell us this? And I guess now's the information age. Yeah. So now's the information age, and we just got to go, well, this is where we're at, isn't it?
It's true. Why didn't I tell this? That there's a problem. But sometimes we stumble upon things like you wish you knew earlier. But that being said, I have to say that people are not really willing to do this work until they're really, really sick.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that too.
I won't take on clients under age 35.
Wow.
They're just not ready. They're just not ready. So you might have had this information 10 years ago. I mean, I don't know, your particular case was rather rough, but there's a certain age group where unless you're really unwell, you're just not ready to put in the work because you're either not unwell enough, or like I feel, I'm 51. That's my cat. I'm sorry.
And looking amazing for people who are listening in, by the way. So, Dr. E definitely looks the part of an amazing, vibrant looking lady for our listeners who aren't watching the YouTube channel.
You're so sweet. Thank you. That's so kind. But like for me, my biggest fear as I go into this part of my life is I want to live optimally. So even though I'm no longer dealing with health issues, I have a fear. I want the next, 30, 40 years of my life to not be in a home, to not be dependent on my children, not lose my memory. And that fear for me is, I did not have this fear in my 30s. I did not have this fear in my 40s.
But it's a drive in there.
Fear. Yeah, so there's a drive in there. So you're either driven because you're unwell, or you're driven because you really want to live well. And so getting this information early on, I don't know that necessarily we're ready to receive it. There's a reason that I go on podcasts for this age group and not for 35%. They're just not ready for it.
Let's pick one other one. Insomnia, which you kind of already mentioned. But yeah, that's a biggie, I know, with women in these menopause years.
So insomnia is two things. It's there's a nutritional component without question. I mean, really, that last meal of the day and the timing of it, like if you're used to snacking, like while you're watching TV and then going to sleep, you're not going to sleep well. You need at least 3 hours between your last meal and when your bedtime is to really sleep well. And most of us don't do that. Coming home late, we're eating late, then we fall asleep on the couch. So none of that is good. So you have that. And then the other piece of it is sleep hygiene. TV, the phone. I only recently finally got the phone out of my room. I kept trying different variations. And it is a whole different level of sleep. There's a whole different level of sleep. We got a nothing phone just to transfer phone calls in case of emergencies, because we're always worried about our kids, what about our moms?
Yeah, that's right.
So sleep hygiene and nutrition are a huge part of it. And then there's also, then on top of that, we give certain supplements, melatonin really helps, magnesium really helps, but none of that will help us. Some people will say to me, melatonin never helped me. Well, melatonin's not going to help you if you also had a glass of wine and pasta. It's not going to help you.
It's the whole picture, isn't it? Yeah.
The whole picture. Yeah. Melatonin on a clean slate is going to knock you out. It's going to knock you out.
Wow.
So, and then there's another piece of it is also like, what are we doing in the daytime? So if during the day, you're working from home all day, you're not seeing the sun, you're not going outside, you're going to have sleep issues. I remember this happened to all of us in COVID. Our brain, first thing in the morning, if we're outside, our brain actually starts pulsing melatonin in preparation for the evening, first thing in the morning. So if it does not get that signaling, by the time nighttime, it's like, what time is it? Is it day? Is it night? So there's sleep hygiene at night, but there's decisions we make throughout the day to make sure that we get into that sleep.
I think we've all been in that place at some time where the doctors kind of looked at us and gone, no, it's It's really in your head here.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
all right.
Here's some antidepressants.
Yes, yes.
And I'm not knocking antidepressants if you need it by all means, but that's not the solution for this. On the assumption that you did all the work, you did not skip any of the tests, you did everything, your mammogram, your pap smear, you got all your annuals, you did everything correctly. And you, in your gut, I called it the new method, and I spelled it with a K.
Yes.
Because you always know, my patients know, there's a better way. This is how my wife and I were like, there's got to be something more than these methods. You know, just trust that voice. That voice got you this far in life.
Yeah.
Just trust that voice. Don't get agitated. Don't get angry. Don't get hostile. Find the provider that, when I have a consult with my patients, most of the time we end up in tears because in that moment where they're believed, where they're like, oh my God. And then like you saw in the little time we spent like in connecting everything when you were a child to now, it's all connected. It's all, you get this one suit to wear, and it's all, the one you have at 50 is the one you had when you were 0. It's all connected. Right. So trust that inner child and keep going until you find someone who could connect the dots for you. I would say try to stay clear of people who focus on one thing, like just the Lyme person or just the mold person, because they tend to see something with one lens. You're going to want someone who is like, well, let's see. Like what I do is like, we start nutritional, but if that doesn't only gets us so far, well, let's see what we need to do. Do we need to go to Lyme? Do we need to go to mold? Do we need to go to hormone? You want someone who is, adaptable enough to be able to try a few things to get to where you want to go. But really just trust in yourself. Don't give up, because you're right. You always know. It's like something from generations ago that we've inherited, where people kind of treated the doctor as this amazing reverent person up on the pedestal, the font of all knowledge and all wisdom. And we're not quite like that anymore, but there's still that kind of, oh, well, all right, I feel yuck, I'm not happy, I'm hurting or sick or unwell or whatever. But he said I'm okay, so it's all right, I'll get on with it. I mean, think about it. It's like going to, somebody gives you this big contract to read and you go to the lawyer and the lawyer's like, you should just sign it. It's good. You're like, okay, I guess I'll sign it. I don't understand the words. Like, it's just, you're going to second guess yourself because you don't know. You don't know which test to order. You don't know. So you have to go to this authority figure, but trust that inner intuition and just keep going. You will find someone who will listen to you. You will. We exist. We're here. There's the Institute of Functional Medicine, like a directory of providers. That's fantastic, because I was actually going to ask you about, for the next steps, where can people find you? Okay, so it's at The New Method everywhere. New is spelled with a K, everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, podcast, website at thenewmethod.com. My team is always looking. If you send a message, you send an email, we will always answer you. And we're here for you. That's brilliant. And for people listening or watching, as you know, I will have all of Dr. E's details in our notes and everything. So I encourage you to go tune into her stations. I've actually been following her on social media for a little while, and just the information and the encouragement she's just doing just in those things, which are free, are really, really powerful. So I just encourage everybody to go check her out. So Dr. E, thank you so much. We could go for hours. I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for the big chat we had earlier about my own things, but I'm just more thrilled than anything of the fact that you're sending out a message of encouragement to women at midlife and beyond, that they actually can change their situation. And I think that is that's powerful. So thank you so much. Thank you for giving me the platform to empower others. Thank you. Wow, what an amazing lady. I just recommend again, please, if you're tuning in, whatever platform you're on, make sure to share this episode out to other women and other men out there, because they're going through things as well, or their partners are going through things. So share this episode out. Please go check out Dr. E's socials, check out her website, and most of all, keep rocking midlife. We'll see you on the next episode.